The Morgan family, Mark, Lisa, and their 11-year-old son, Tyler, had grown weary of the relentless hum of city life. Seeking respite, they booked a week-long retreat at a secluded cabin by Stillwater Lake in northern Minnesota. The online listing glowed with promises of serenity, solitude, and a rich historical past. The photos showcased a rustic wooden cabin framed by towering pines, its reflection shimmering in the lake's glassy surface. It seemed perfect, but from the moment they arrived, an unshakable unease settled over them, as if the lake itself was watching. The cabin, built in 1927 by Elias Voyle, a reclusive man shrouded in local legend, stood at the edge of the lake. Elias had been an enigma, wealthy eccentric who, after a devastating fire in a nearby orphanage, adopted 6 children whose families perished in the blaze. The locals, however, whispered darker tales. They said Elias wasn't saving those children, but quieting their nightmares. He'd locked them in the cabin's basement for days, claiming their cries disturbed the voices in his head. The bricked-up wall in the basement, according to hushed rumors, concealed a passage to the lake where Elias drowned each child, one by one, believing their deaths would silence his torment. A lullaby, soft and haunting, was said to echo underwater where their bodies sank. The Morgans, unaware of this grim history, arrived on a humid July afternoon. The air was heavy, the cabin colder than it should have been. A faint smell of mildew lingered, laced with something metallic, like old blood. Tyler, undeterred, raced to the lake's edge, thrilled to have a private dock to himself. Mark and Lisa, though unsettled by the cabin's chill, chalked it up to poor insulation and focused on unpacking. That first night, Lisa jolted awake to rhythmic splashing, deliberate, like footsteps in water. She crept to the window, her breath catching as she saw Tyler standing motionless at the dock's edge, his silhouette stark against the moonlit lake. Heart pounding, she rushed outside, but he was gone. Panic surged until she found him back in bed, fast asleep, his clothes dry. She could have sworn he hadn't been there moments ago. Shaking, she locked the doors and sat by his side until dawn. The next morning, Mark explored the cabin while Lisa kept Tyler close. In the basement, he found crude etchings carved into the wooden beams, stick figures, all facing a bricked-up section of the wall. Their uneven lines suggested a child's hand, but the precision of their arrangement felt ritualistic. Mark, a pragmatic man, dismissed them as the work of a bored tenant. But that night, he dreamed of suffocation, of dirt filling his lungs as he clawed at an unyielding wall. He woke gasping, his throat raw, and noticed fresh scratch marks on the inside of their bedroom, door-jagged, at Tyler's height. Tyler, asleep, had no marks on his hands. By day 3, Tyler's behavior shifted. He grew quiet, his usual chatter replaced by long stares into the woods. "They're watching me from the trees," he whispered when Lisa pressed him. His skin was icy despite the summer heat, and his eyes, once bright, seemed to reflect something distant, like the lake's depths. Lisa's unease deepened when she caught him sleepwalking toward the dock again, his lips moving as if murmuring to someone unseen. She shook him awake, and he blinked at her, confused, whispering, "He says I have to stay." On day 4, Mark found an old photograph wedged behind the fireplace. It showed 6 unsmiling figures, 5 children, and a gaunt man standing before the cabin. One boy, no older than Tyler, bore an uncanny resemblance to him. The same sharp jaw, the same dark eyes. Scrawled on the back in faded pencil were the words, "They always take one." Lisa's blood ran cold. She demanded they leave immediately, but the car wouldn't start. The engine was pristine, the tank full, yet each turn of the key produced only a sputterand, a new symbol etched in condensation on the windshield. They formed a sequence, like a code, but their meaning eluded Mark. Desperate, he tried to call for help, but their phones displayed no signal, despite the listing claiming decent reception. That night, Lisa submerged her head in the lake, testing a whim born of fear. Beneath the water, faint but unmistakable, she heard a lullaby, Elias's lullaby, the one locals said he sang before each killing. By dawn on day 5, the Morgans abandoned the car and fled on foot. The 9-mile trek through dense woods was grueling. Tyler lagged behind, his steps faltering as he glanced back at the lake. "He says I have to stay," he repeated, his voice soft but resolute. Lisa gripped his hand tighter, refusing to let go. They reached a gas station at dusk, where a tow truck driver, wary of Stillwater Lake, agreed to retrieve their car. He returned hours later, pale, saying the car started without issue, but the cabin's door was wide open, though he swore no one was inside. A month later, the cabin vanished from rental sites. No one could trace its owner, and locals refused to speak of it. The Morgans tried to move on, but Lisa couldn't shake the dread. She began noticing muddy footprints in their home, always leading from the window to Tyler's bed, but never back. One night, she stayed awake, watching. At 2 a.m., Tyler rose, his eyes glassy, and spoke in a voice not his own higher, older, like a child from another time. "Samuel wants to stay," he said, then collapsed back into sleep. Lisa researched the cabin's history, uncovering Elias Voil's story. Samuel, one of the orphans, had been the last to die, drowned at the exact spot where Tyler sleepwalked. The photo confirmed it. Samuel's face was Tyler's, down to the faintest freckle. She found no record of Elias's death, only a vague mention of him vanishing after the children's bodies were found. Some locals claimed to have seen a figure on the dock years later, motionless, watching the water. Was Elias still there, bound to the lake in some form? Did Samuel's spirit linger in Tyler, speaking through him in the dead of night? Lisa didn't know. She only knew the lake had claimed something from her son, and no amount of distance could break its hold. They moved across the country, but the footprints followed. Each night, Lisa checked the windows, the doors, the lake that wasn't there, and each night she heard it a faint lullaby, carried on the wind, calling Tyler back to Stillwater. Camp Red Hollow had been a cornerstone of summer memories for over 4 decades, nestled deep in the Oregon wilderness. Its sprawling grounds were a haven for children seeking adventure hiking trails that wound through towering pines, a shimmering lake perfect for swimming, and nightly campfires where s'mores and ghost stories were shared under a starlit sky. For generations, families sent their kids to Red Hollow, confident in its reputation as a place of joy and discovery. But in the summer of 2019, that reputation shattered. 5 campers from cabin 6 vanished without a trace, leaving behind no clues, no signs of struggle, just an eerie absence that haunted the camp's legacy. The mystery gripped the nation, and Red Hollow became synonymous with loss. By the summer of 2020, the camp's new management was determined to reclaim its place as a beloved retreat. They poured resources into safety upgrades, motion, activated trail cameras, stricter curfews, and a fresh team of counselors. Among them was Jamie, a 22-year-old recent college graduate with a love for the outdoors and no knowledge of the camp's dark history. He arrived eager to guide campers through hikes and teach them how to tie knots, unaware of the shadow that lingered over Red Hollow. During orientation, Jamie sensed an undercurrent of unease among the returning staff. They spoke in hushed tones, their eyes darting nervously when the conversation turned to the camp's past. On his second day, two veteran counsellors pulled him aside near the mess hall. Their warning was cryptic but firm. Never let the campers near the old footbridge beyond the tree line, where the forest grew unnaturally dense. They called it the Quiet Trail, a path where no birds sang, no wind stirred, and the air felt heavy with silence. Jamie laughed it off as a hazing ritual for new hires, a spooky story to keep him on edge. But the counsellors' faces remained grim, and one of them, a woman named Sarah, added, "If you hear voices out there, don't follow them. They're not what they seem." The footbridge, Jamie later learned, was a relic from 1911, built over a sinkhole that had once been a grim secret. Decades ago, a fanatical missionary group had used the site to bury children they deemed sinful, their tiny bodies consigned to the earth in a ritual meant to cleanse their souls. The story was buried in local lore, but the land remembered. After the burials, trees sprouted around the sinkhole at an unnatural pace, their roots bone white and twisting like skeletal fingers through the soil. The bridge itself was a rickety wooden structure, its planks warped and moss-covered, swaying slightly even when no one crossed it. Jamie couldn't shake the feeling that the forest itself was watching. The first few weeks at camp were uneventful, filled with laughter and the chaos of managing energetic kids. But as the summer wore on, Jamie noticed odd details. The trees near the Quiet Trail seemed to lean inward, as if guarding a secret. Campers who ventured too close returned pale and quiet, claiming they'd heard whispers in the leaves' voices that sounded like their friends calling their names. Jamie dismissed it as imagination, but he couldn't ignore the way the search dogs growled and refused to approach the trail during routine patrols. Then, one humid July night, a camper named Dylan went missing during an evening hike. The group had been singing songs and weaving through familiar trails when Dylan, a quiet 12-year-old with a knack for sketching, slipped away unnoticed. The counsellors launched a search immediately, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. But the woods felt wrong. The trails seemed to shift, looping back on themselves. The trees loomed closer, their bone-white roots glinting in the moonlight. The search dogs whimpered and planted their paws, refusing to move past a certain point near the footbridge. For 2 days, the camp was a frenzy of panic. Parents were notified, police combed the grounds, and volunteers scoured the forest. Jamie barely slept, haunted by the memory of Dylan's empty bunk. On the third morning, Dylan stumbled back into camp drenched, barefoot, and covered in dirt that smelled faintly of decay. His clothes were torn, and his eyes were wide with a terror he couldn't articulate. When asked where he'd been, he only shook his head, muttering, "They didn't want me to leave." That night, Jamie found him sitting upright in bed, staring at the wall, whispering, "They're still out there, the ones who didn't come back." The camp's atmosphere grew heavier. At night, Jamie heard faint singing from the direction of the Quiet Trail, though no one else admitted to hearing it. Lights flickered in the distance, as if the camp was still operating in secret for unseen visitors. One evening, while checking the motion-activated trail cameras, Jamie froze. The footage showed 5 figures standing just beyond the footbridge, perfectly still, their eyes glowing like embers in the grainy black and white feed. Their mouths were sewn shut with crude, uneven stitches, yet they moved in eerie unison, mimicking the gestures of the missing 2019 campers. One of them raised a hand, and Jamie swore he heard a voice, Dylan's voice, calling his name through the camera's audio. The figures weren't human, Jamie was certain. They were something else, something tied to the sinkhole and the children buried there long ago. The missionaries' ritual had left a stain on the land, and the 5 missing campers had become its vessels. They lured others to the bridge, their sewn mouths whispering in stolen voices, drawing the curious and the careless into the quiet trail's embrace. Jamie's dreams were plagued by visions of the bridge, its planks creaking under his feet as bone-white roots reached for his ankles. Unable to bear the weight of what he'd seen, Jamie quit in late August. On his final day, he found a handprint on his backpack, small, childlike, and smudged with the same sinkhole dirt found under Dylan's nails. He didn't tell anyone, afraid it marked him as the next to be called. He left Red Hollow without looking back, but the whispers followed him, faint and persistent, even in the city. Camp Red Hollow closed for good the following year. The property sits abandoned, its gates locked, its trails overgrown. Realtors refuse to show it, citing strange occurrences lights flickering in the empty cabins, singing echoing from the forest at night. Locals whisper that the camp never truly shut down, that it operates in secret for them, the figures who watch from the shadows of the quiet trail. Dylan's family moved away, but his sketches remain, tucked away in a box his parents can't bring themselves to open. The spiral symbol haunts them, appearing in dreams and etched faintly on the walls of their new home. Jamie, too, is haunted. He avoids bridges, unable to shake the feeling that the quiet trail is still out there, waiting. The footbridge's secret endures, a wound in the earth that refuses to heal, calling to anyone foolish enough to listen. The summer of 2018 was supposed to be a carefree escape for Michelle and Alex, a young couple craving the open road. They set out from Nevada, bound for Arizona, with no itinerary, no reservations, just the hum of their beat-up sedan and the promise of adventure. The desert stretched endlessly before them, a sea of sand and scrub under a relentless sun. By late afternoon, their gas gauge was hovering near empty, and the vast emptiness of the landscape offered no relief. That's when they saw it. A flickering neon sign piercing the haze like a beacon. Ray's service. Last stop for 50 miles. Michelle checked her phone. No signal. No listing for Ray's service on Google Maps. No reviews, no mentions, nothing. It was as if the place didn't exist. But with the fuel light blinking, they had no choice. Alex steered the car into the cracked asphalt lot, pulling up beside a rusted gas pump that looked like it hadn't been touched since Eisenhower was president. The station itself was a relic-faded paint peeling from the walls, a warped sign dangling above the door, and an ancient payphone bolted to the side, its receiver dangling like a noose. The air was heavy, thick with the scent of oil and something sour, unplaceable. There were no other cars, no signs of life, just silence. They waited. 5 minutes stretched into 10. Alex drummed his fingers on the steering wheel, his unease growing. Michelle, restless, climbed out to stretch her legs, squinting at the horizon. The desert seemed to pulse, the heat warping the air into shimmering waves. Just as they were about to give up and drive on, the station's door creaked open. An older man stepped out, his stained overalls hanging loosely on a wiry frame. His face was weathered, etched with deep lines. But it was his eyes that stopped Michelle cold. They were cloudy, not with the milky haze of cataracts, but with something deeper, unnatural-like fog trapped behind glass. He didn't speak, didn't even look at them directly. He just pointed to the pump with a bony finger and shuffled back inside. Alex, shaken but pragmatic, started fueling up. Michelle, needing a break from the oppressive heat, ventured into the station to find water. The interior was a time capsule, frozen in the 1950s. Dust coated every surface, and the shelves were lined with expired goods scans of Spam, with faded labels, boxes of cereal that crumbled at a touch. The air was stale, tinged with mildew. A lone fluorescent bulb flickered overhead, casting jagged shadows. Michelle scanned the shelves, her unease growing, until her eyes landed on a glass bottle of soda, its label peeling but oddly pristine compared to everything else. She reached for it, and as her fingers closed around the cold glass, she froze. The bottle whispered her name, Michelle. The voice was faint, childlike, and impossibly clear. She dropped the bottle, heart pounding, and it hit the floor without breaking. The whisper stopped. Before she could process what had happened, the ancient radio behind the counter crackled to life, spitting static. A voice low, urgent, and unmistakably male-cut through the noise. "Don't let them leave," Michelle screamed, bolting for the door. Outside, Alex was already in the driver's seat, the car idling. "Get in!" he shouted, his face pale. She didn't need to be told twice. They peeled out, tires screeching, the station shrinking in the rear-view mirror. But as the minutes ticked by, something was wrong. The desert road stretched on, unchanging, and after 20 minutes, Michelle's blood ran cold. There it was again, the same neon sign, the same rusted pumps, the same warped building. Ray's service. "That's impossible," Alex muttered, gripping the wheel. They'd been driving straight. No turns, no detours. He floored the gas, determined to push past it, but the station reappeared, closer this time, as if the road itself was bending to meet it. They tried turning around, thinking they'd somehow looped back, but no matter which direction they drove, north, south, east, west, the station was there, waiting, its neon sign flickering like a taunting wink. Desperate, they pulled over and shut off the engine. The silence was deafening, broken only by the faint hum of the desert wind. "We'll walk," Alex said, his voice trembling. "We'll find the highway." They grabbed their phones and a half-empty water bottle and started trekking away from the station, the heat pressing down like a physical weight. But as they walked, Michelle glanced back and gasped. The station was moving, not physically, not with creaking wood or grinding metal, but shifting, sliding across the horizon, always staying just out of reach, yet never letting them escape its gaze. Panic set in. They sprinted back to the car, hearts racing, and sped off again. Michelle's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror, and her scream tore through the car. The old man was there, sitting in the back seat, his cloudy eyes locked on hers. His grin was wide, toothless, and wrong, like a crack in reality itself. The world spun, and everything went black. When they woke, it was morning. The car was parked on the shoulder of a normal highway, the desert stretching out innocently around them. No neon sign, no rusted pumps, no station. Just the hum of distant traffic and the glare of the rising sun. Michelle's head throbbed, and Alex was slumped over the wheel, groaning. They checked their phones somehow. They had signal again, and the GPS showed they were miles from where they'd last stopped. But in the back seat, gleaming under the morning light, was the bottle of soda from Ray's service. Its label was pristine, and when Michelle reached for it, she swore she heard the whisper again, fainter this time, her name spoken by a voice that wasn't hers. They drove home in silence, the bottle untouched in the trunk, but the station didn't let them go. For months, Michelle heard Ray's voice in Staticon, her car radio, her television, even her phone. It was always the same phrase, "Don't let them leave." Alex, meanwhile, couldn't sleep. In his dreams, the station was always there, A mile behind him, its neon sign glowing in the darkness. He'd wake up gasping, certain he could smell oil and mildew. They tried to research Ray's service, but found nothing. No records, no history. Just whispers on obscure forums about a man named Raymond Ketter who vanished in 1953 while searching for his missing daughter. Some said the station was his purgatory, a loop where he relived that day, stealing travellers' memories to fill the silence. Others claimed the whispering soda held his daughter's voice, trapped forever in glass. One post, buried deep in a thread, posed a chilling question. Could you free Raymond by finding his daughter's remains? Another warned that the soda itself was Curstone sip, and your body would decay rapidly, aging decades in seconds. Michelle and Alex never returned to the desert. The bottle sits locked in a box in their attic, unopened, its whispers faint but persistent. They don't talk about that day, but the questions linger. What was Ray's service? Was Raymond still out there, trapped in his endless loop? Or had he passed his curse to them? And the soda, did it hold the key to his freedom, or something far worse? The desert keeps its secrets, and some places, no matter how brightly they shine under the summer sun, are better left undiscovered. Ray's service waits, its neon sign flickering, ready for the next weary traveller to pull in, and Raymond Ketter, with his cloudy eyes and toothless grin, is always watching. Sleep tight, summer's just getting started.